Good day everyone, my name is Kimberly Kagat from BS Ed English 3A. So the purpose of this video is for the final requirement in Literary Criticism 316. So let us start. The Bell Jar. The Bell Jar details the life of Esther Greenwood, a college student who dreams of becoming a poet. She is selected for a month-long summer internship as a guest editor of Ladies' Day magazine. But her time in New York City is unfulfilling as she struggles with issues of identity and societal norms. She meets two other interns who manifest contrasting views of femininity as well as Esther's own internal conflicts. The rebellious and sexual Doreen and the wholesome and virginal Betsy. During this time, Esther thinks about her boyfriend, Buddy Williard, and her anger when he admitted that he was not a virgin, claiming to have been seduced. She believes he is a hypocrite, having acted as if she was more sexually experienced. After being rejected for a writing class, Esther must spend the rest of her summer at home with her mother. Esther's father died when she was young. She struggles to write a novel and becomes increasingly despondent, making several half-hearted suicide attempts. She ultimately overdoses on sleeping pills but survives. Esther is admitted to a mental institute where she is treated by a progressive psychiatrist who, among other things, eases her concerns about premarital sex and encourages her to obtain a diaphragm. In addition, Esther undergoes electric shock treatment, which makes her feel as if she has been freed from a bell jar. While on a night pass, Esther loves her virginity, which she sees as a millstone. When she begins hemorrhaging, she seeks the help of another patient, Joanne, who goes with her to the emergency room. Shortly thereafter, Joanne commits suicide, and her death seems to quell Esther's own suicidal thoughts. The novel ends with a seemingly reborn Esther about to face the examination board, which will decide if she can go home. The Bell Jar is a feminist novel not because it was written by a feminist, but because it deals with feminist issues of power, the sexual double standard, and the quest for identity and search for selfhood, and the demands of nurturing. So for the sample evidences of the given story, so here are the sample texts gathered from the story itself. So it says here, so I also remember Buddy Williard saying in a sinister, knowing way that after I had children, I would feel differently. I wouldn't want to write poems anymore. So I began to think maybe it was true that when you're married and had children, it was like being brainwashed. And afterward, you went about numb as a slave in some private totalitarian state. So this was from Flat 69. The sample text, so Esther's other great fascination in the novel seems to be birth. She refers to the babies in the jars at Buddy Williard's medical school several times. She also describes Mrs. Tomililio's birthing experience in detail. In this detailed description, she refers to the birthing room as a torture chamber. Esther is feeling the demand placed on women to be natural mothers or nurturers. She feels as if she will have to give up herself if she decides to marry and have a family. She expresses this when she said, Esther often thinks about the sexual double standards that she faces in society. In particular, she has constant thoughts about her sexual status. She is a virgin for most of the novel, and this constantly weighs on her mind. We have a second evidence here from the given story. So it says that when I was 19, pureness was the great issue. So instead of the world being divided up into Catholics and Protestants, or Republicans and Democrats, or white men and black men, or even men and women, I saw the world divided into people who had slept with somebody and people who hadn't. And this seemed the only really significant difference between one person and another. This text means that when Esther brought up to believe that a woman must still be a virgin when she got married and assume the same was true for men, then she discovered that Buddy Williard was not a virgin. In fact, he had slept with a waitress a couple of times a week for a whole summer. Esther soon discovered that it may be difficult to find a red-blooded, intelligent man who was still pure by the time he was 21. So that was located also in page 66 in Platt. So she couldn't stand the idea of a woman having to have a single pure life and a man being able to have a double life, one pure and one not. She didn't like the sexual double standard, so she was determined to find and lose her virginity. If it was alright for a man to do, then it was alright for her to do. Here we have another evidence from the novel. So it says that what I always thought I had in mind was getting some big scholarship to graduate school or a grant to study all over Europe. And then I thought I'd be a professor and write books of poems, or write books, poems, and be an editor of some sort. Usually, I had all these plans on the top of my tongue. These texts or evidence merely emphasize about the searching for help, searching for self. So the novel deals especially well with the feminist issue of a woman searching for her identity or sense of self. One of the reasons that Esther loses control over her life is that she thought that she knew how her life would pan out. She really began to think about her future, the vast possibilities open to her, and the decision she would soon have to make for her life when she was interning in New York. She was overwhelmed. She wanted to be everything at once while realizing that she couldn't be everything at once. Esther had always been such a high achiever. Failure had never really occurred to her. Suddenly, she was off her track. She made this realization when she was talking to her boss, JC. Conclusion about the story, The Bell Jar. So, the thought process of Esther Greenwood reveals a complex array of desires and ideals based on high expectations, all of which are never met and aid in her depression. Sylvia Plath parallels her struggle with depression and illustrates the pressures that elicit this psychosis in the bell jar. So it is plainly woven through 1950s society how women often spiraled into depression from both the restrictions and the high expectancy that conforms them. For Esther, the bell jar symbolizes madness. When gripped by insanity, she feels as if is inside an airless jar that distorts her perspective on the world and prevents her from connecting with the people around her. One of the main lessons in the bell jar is that everyone is struggling with issues in their life, and that struggle looks different with each person. Esther hides her depression behind a cheerful exterior for much of the novel. She turns in her work on time and looks the part of a young up and coming writer. That concludes our discussion for the analysis Feministic Analysis of the Bell Jar, who was written by Sylvia Plath. So I hope you have learned a lot and thank you so much for listening.